Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Orr. Tom, as we sit here in the Woody Hayes Athletic Center, how are you doing?
I'm great. We decided this is potentially our last midweek player interview of the season at the WAC, and we wanted to go old school. So we were sitting on the indoor practice facility. There is a John Deere Gator located probably 20 to 25 feet from us. There's a crew walking over right now. They're going to start it. You're going to have that great old school engine noise that you have come to love and know and love. A big part of this podcast, we wanted to kind of pay homage to that with our last, potentially our last midweek podcast at the WAC this year.
Give you the full environment of the situation because we know that's what you are here for. So, Tom, today was a Monday availability where we talked to Ryan Day, and let's see if we can get all of these players correct.
Probably not.
Seven Banks, Josh Myers, Jeremy Ruckert, Jonah Jackson,
Sean
Wade, and Zach Harrison. Is that all six? Because we did not get...
And you said Jonah Jackson. Yes, I think that was all.
So that was all six. And a lot of good stuff from that. Mostly some good stuff, I shouldn't say mostly, but some really good stuff from Ryan Day as well regarding Jeff Hafley's departure, which we have not actually had a chance to talk about because on our last podcast we spent so much time talking about Kevin Wilson's departure to Colorado State.
Yes.
Let's listen to the mechanics. Yes. The dulcet tones as I get my foot run over.
Yep. There it is.
So nice.
That's the stuff. That is what you're here for. And it started 20 feet away, but they turned, and did they turn away from us? No, they turned towards us, so that then when it made the U-turn, it was roughly 5 feet away.
You're supposed to turn into the podcast.
It was, yes. I mean, that's
what they teach you at driver's ed.
Page 2 of the operator's manual is one of those things. It was. I was frankly a little surprised that Jeff Hafley took the BC job. And, I mean, I know he's a Northeast guy, and I know he wants to be a head coach at some point. As we said the last time, I think he can get a better job than BC like a year from now. Like that is a stepping stone job that he just took, and I feel like he probably could have gotten he could have found his forever home if he waited another year. But if you want to do it, you want to do it, and that's you certainly can't begrudge him that.
Tom, you used to be a Northeast guy. Now you're a Midwest guy. I wonder if you've lost your Northeasternness if you didn't realize a Jersey guy would jump at the chance to be Boston College's head coach.
As a person who is originally from New Jersey, I would not live in Boston at gunpoint. So, there's...
What about Chestnut Hill?
That's actually part of Boston. So, it's not the same. That was one of the reasons, honestly, that I didn't necessarily think it was going to be... Like, if he had gotten the Rutgers job and Rutgers was not, Rutgers, if it was just a New Jersey State University, which is in the Big Ten, then sure. Like, then absolutely. Boston is a different... I mean, your accents are all different. I mean, they call sandwiches different things. It's basically a foreign country.
Yeah, and I was also surprised, but you think maybe you're doing it just to get the experience of interviewing. Coaches do that, but that obviously is not the case, and now he is gone, and we did get to talk to Seven Banks and Sean Wade today as well. We can talk a little bit about that, but in terms of Ryan Day, he said he wants to have this filled quickly, but they're going to get the right guy, so it may not be quickly, and when you think about who that could be or could not be, one of the popular names is Cary Combs, bringing him back from the NFL. The time crunch here is signing day, which is Wednesday of this week. But I asked Ryan Day today if he expects all 5 defensive backs to sign. He said he did. And so if that is the expectation, you don't necessarily need to have somebody in this week to try and save the recruiting class, which could lend credence to Cary Combs could finish out the season. There's time there. There isn't necessarily the crunch that, like, once you get past this early signing date, then you have some breathing room.
Yeah. Then you've got, because the later signing day, or what was known as just signing day a couple of years ago, is the first Wednesday in February. So once you get through Wednesday, December 18th, nothing's going to happen until Wednesday, February, 3rd or 5th or whatever it is at that point. So you do have time at that point. If you're looking at an NFL guy like Combs, you've got time for the NFL season to play out and for him to have a couple weeks to be back on campus and move forward at that point. And if it's someone else, another college coach, he has shown a proclivity for poaching coaches from Michigan. So I can't remember off the top of my head who Michigan's secondary coach is, but I don't expect that he'll go after Don Brown after the way he's treated Don Brown the last couple of years.
Well, the way Ohio State's passing game has treated Michigan's secondary in the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Do you necessarily want?
Yeah, maybe not.
Maybe not.
One of the things that was very interesting to me was how he was pretty definitive that he did not expect any other assistants to move on this offseason. And especially with Al Washington, someone asked him, do you think Al Washington might consider if Hafley offers him a defensive coordinator job? It was just kind of like, no, I don't think that's something he would be interested in. It was just very much like, wow, that was... It
was very definitive and very
It was very much like, I know this for a fact, exactly. Which was not... that's not the answer I was necessarily expecting, because Washington played his college ball at Boston College, and he and Hafley just spent the last year coaching together on a successful defense. So, that was one of the more surprising answers, I think, today, just how immediate and definitive it was.
It was one step below saying, like, only if he's an idiot. It was very definitive and quick and like, no, I would be shocked, he said. So yes, the Al Washington will be back unless he's an idiot.
I have not gotten
that's a joke.
I have not gotten the sense that he's an idiot, but
so there is that. I guess I don't necessarily expect things to move super quickly. There's Clemson to worry about right now as well. Mm-hmm. Jeff Hafley will stay here throughout, as he said this morning at his
press conference in Boston. Yeah,
right. He said he's got to go back and win a national title, so that's what they're working on now. Mm-hmm. The rest of the stuff today from Ryan Day, gosh, there's a bunch. The defense, Ohio State's defense, he said that this is his defense, and it will be the defense next year as well, which I think is reassuring to a lot of people, and is also another reason why Chris Ash has not been hired by Ohio State, because he's got his own defense that he runs, and it's not the vision that Ryan Day has for his defense.
No, and that was interesting, because it was very much this all comes from the top. The vision for the whole program comes from the top, and that's something that we have not necessarily heard on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, the offensive side of the ball is that was Ryan Day, who just went back and said, "What's up, guys?" He didn't stay. He didn't stay because obviously he knows he'll listen later. But he has, you have known from the beginning that this is going to be Ryan Day's offense. But he said his vision. I mean, that like single high defense. That's like he wanted to run that, and he has basically in the past said, like, you want your defense doing stuff that's hard for your offense.
Yeah.
So the flexibility and having like a Sean Wade as that third corner and all of that. That's the kind of defense that's a pain in the butt if you're an offensive coach. So hey, this is hard for me to attack, so therefore I want other coaches to have to attack that kind of defense.
Yeah, and before the season, he talked about how Madison and Hafley and Larry Johnson got into a room and devised this, and he had some input. But here, it's like today was the most ownership he's taken over of that defense, mm-hmm. and how this was what he had envisioned, and this is something that Larry Johnson and Greg Madison also wanted, and so then they will continue that. And I think it's reassuring given how well this defense has played this year. Obviously, players are going to change. The secondary is going to be quite different next year. But this defense has worked. Ryan Day says it's a defense that gives him trouble. And so now you try to just build on it. Obviously, you'll have a new guy in charge of the secondary, but having Matt Barnes back as well will help in that transition. As Sevin Banks said that as well. It's just nice to have another familiar face back in the secondary to get them through this. So, yeah, it was an interesting discussion about the defense and keeping the four down linemen as always, and no talk about Larry Johnson not being here next year or anything like that. It was just this is what we're going to do next year. Everybody's going to be here, and we're going to do it.
Well, and the other thing that he said was, you have co-defensive coordinators this year, and one of them is leaving, and you have 2 secondary coaches, and one of them is leaving, but one of each of those guys is also staying, so you still have that continuity. You're not, this is not like starting from scratch and everyone has to learn a new system or meet a completely new coach. Like you're kind of meet the new boss same as the old boss, and yes, there will be some new face in those meeting rooms next spring, but there will be enough continuity. And with a season like they've had, of course you want all the stuff that's working really well, just keep doing that. Like that's pretty simple. That was something that Ryan Day just very explicitly said. Like that was part of the draw of having kind of co-guys in a couple of spots, because I don't think anyone anticipated Jeff Hafley jumping after 1 year, but Jeff Hafley was very clearly not going to be a lifer at Ohio State. He came in on day one, and I think you and I both walked out of our first press conference with him going, "Oh yeah, that guy's gonna be a head coach."
Yeah, like
somewhere significant pretty soon. But and you plan for that, and you set your system up so that it just kind of keeps rolling. That was, and Ryan Day talked about that. He was asked about the fact that all 4 coaches in the playoff were all coaches who came internally. Yeah. Lincoln Riley came up after Bob Stoops, Ed Orgeron after Les Miles, Ryan Day after Urban Meyer, and Dabo Swinney after Tommy Bowden. They all were internal candidates, and that continuity ends up, there's always this like, oh, go out and make the flashy hire. But, there's a lot of evidence that you kind of keep the culture. If the culture is solid in the program, you just kind of keep the culture going, keep some continuity in there.
Look at Wisconsin.
Yeah. I mean, it's just basically been Wisconsin guys for the most part, or, guys closely akin to Wisconsin guys. I mean, Brett Bielema was a Iowa player, but
it's Barry Alvarez's program.
Yes, it's still Barry Alvarez's
program. It's that
program.
identity.
Yes, sometimes that works, and sometimes you're haunted by the ghost of Bo Schembechler for decades.
Well, Wisconsin knows what they should be where they should set their sights. Michigan thinks they should shoot their shot higher than the.
What if we lost the Rose Bowl every year? Like, no, that's actually not a good goal. Actually,
so Ryan Day and the coaching staff have been preparing for Clemson in their spare moments. Day said it was this past week was the craziest. Probably, I assume it's the craziest of his life.
Yeah, it sure sounded like it.
Going from award shows, he was an MC, or not an MC, but the keynote speaker at one of the awards, and flying around with the players, hitting homes of recruits, making sure everybody's going to sign. You think back to this new signing day, and you go back to the old signing day remember when they signed Mike Weber and then Stan Drayton left? Mm-hmm. And it's like that was when coaching changes would take place.
Yeah, yeah.
And now you're dealing with it this early, and Shaun Wade was asked if this will impact his decision, depending on who they hire. He said yes, but he's not really thinking about it. It's easy to wonder if Cary Combs would be a guy who could keep him here.
Yeah, well, he's had, this would be 4 defensive backs coaches in 4 years, except the first year and fourth year would be the same, which would be extremely weird. But, this has been a very...
I'm sure it'll probably be that way in Michigan State in a couple of years.
Yeah.
With everybody just rotating around.
He was the linebackers coach last year, and then he was in charge of hydration the year before that. Yeah, that's something tells me Mark D'Antonio will not be there 4 years from now to play merry-go-round with coaches again. But yeah, I mean, that would be, if it is a Cary Combs, that would be kind of interesting, because then you've got a guy who Wade is familiar with. You've got a guy who, just like Hafley, has that NFL pedigree. Yeah. This is not someone failing out of the NFL and then getting a job at Ohio State like Bill Davis. This is someone who would, has a job on a NFL team with a winning record. I checked. I had to check, but I checked. They are 8-6 right now. Like there's, and the feedback from the Tennessee Titans kind of websites is kind of like, oh, we don't want to lose him. Yeah. So, it turns out Cary Combs is a pretty good defensive back coach, and also pretty entertaining to have around, and people want him around.
Yeah, and the question for me is always, once they leave for the NFL, do they want to come back and recruit? And Cary Combs is an amazing recruiter, tremendous recruiter who is tireless, but you can only be tireless for so long. Mm-hmm. And you wonder if, have the recruiting muscles atrophied? When you're comfortable doing what you're doing. You travel week to week to a game here or a game there, but you're at home.
Right.
And in college, you're not.
Yeah, I mean, there's just a lot of life on the road. There's a lot of texting and calling and communicating and DMing and everything else with a bunch of 18-year-old guys. And, I can tell you that doesn't sound like a ton of fun to me. So I can imagine that probably wouldn't be a ton of fun to Cary Combs. And, it's interesting, you look at his Twitter account when he was Ohio State, it was very active. I think he hasn't tweeted. Well. He hasn't tweeted August? In August or September. Maybe you're just doing that for professional reasons and not actually legitimately interested in being on Twitter. And I can relate. I feel you there. And maybe the allure of working for Ryan Day. I mean, Ryan Day has the atmosphere in the Woody Hayes building, I think, is maybe a little more relaxed than it has been in the past. And so that may be appealing to him. But there's, if it's Cary Combs, I think that's probably a pretty big win for this team. Yeah,
and we'll see if other names emerge and what happens there. But would certainly be welcomed back by, I think everyone.
I mean,
fans, media, players.
The recruiting. He was one of the best recruiters on staff when he was at Ohio State. So from the recruiting perspective, that would be a win. From the positional coaching perspective, that would be a win. From the entertaining press conference perspective, that would be a win. I mean, I'm on board with that. Let's do that.
In terms of the relative health of the team, sounds like everything is good there. Day said Justin Fields will be 100% by the game. Mm-hmm. Sean Wade said he's going to be good. Who else were other? There were some other guys who were.
Jeff Okuda was back during the Big Ten championship game, so he was fine. Wyatt Davis, we didn't hear anything specifically about Wyatt Davis. He had
but he played after.
He played after that, so you would think he would be good to go.
There's somebody else out there today that were they banged up.
While you're thinking about that, I will say that I watched Sean Wade walk in and out, and there was no noticeable limp. There was no cast. There was no, huge bruise somewhere that was visible. Like it was, he looks like someone who's fine. Ryan Day kind of made it sound like, well, it might be, we'll see how he's doing in practice this week. And then it was a little bit more cautious than I would have anticipated. Sean Wade just basically said, "No, I'm good. I'll be straight, no problem." That with facing a receiver core like Clemson has, and we can get into the matchups during one of our 15 podcasts between now and the game. Yes. But just in general, when you're facing a team with as good and talented and deep a receiving core as Clemson has, you're going to want to have your 3 starting corners on the field all the time.
Yep, and it's also beneficial to have Cameron Brown and Sevin Banks get so much time for once you go nickel dime, extra defensive backs against those guys, and then hope everybody just holds up against Travis Etienne, and then that's why he averages 9 yards a carry, because they spread team defenses out so much. But Ohio State's defense can cover a lot of ground. Their defensive line can hold up. I still feel, and I said it before, as long as they protect Justin Fields, I think they're going to be okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you ask me right now to boil this down to 3 very neat little bullet points on what decides this game, number 1, can Ohio State run the ball? Number 2, can Ohio State protect Justin Fields? Number 3, can Ohio State's defensive backs at least contain? Not lock down, but just contain. Don't let Clemson's wide receivers do the Sammy Watkins thing. Just contain them, and if Trevor Lawrence is, 350 yards or less, you'd feel reasonably decent about. If the other 2 things happen and Trevor Lawrence is not going off for 400-something yards, you'd feel pretty good about Ohio State.
Now, if he's 16 for 20 for 350?
That could be a problem. There is some context. There's further context needed, yes.
So, we're all looking forward to it, of course. Brenda Dwight.
Yes.
He is in the transfer portal. I don't know if we talked since then.
No, I think that was right after we recorded the last one.
Right, and Ryan Day was asked for an update, or could he come back? And Ryan Day said there's no update, and it did not sound like
it wasn't
he
like
would be back.
There was nothing that was like we're hopeful that he will. No, it sounded very much like
that bridge is gone.
Yes,
is what it seemed like.
Yeah, and that's very interesting because now you've got two of the starting safeties from last year's team that are both gone. Isaiah Pryor he just graduated. He's going to Notre Dame. Brendan White is off to destinations unknown at this point, but it sure. There were a few things during that press conference that were like, oh, that was interesting, and like Justin Fields being 100%, like definitively expecting to be 100%. Sean Wade, like, we'll see on Sean Wade. That was kind of interesting. Brendan White, like, pretty much definitely not going, and or not potentially coming back, and Al Washington. Like, no, he's not going to Boston College. I think those were the kind of handful of things that I kind of like sat up straight in my chair, like, oh, that was a thing.
He was asked about assistant quarterback coach Corey Dennis, who is the son-in-law of Urban Meyer, and whether he would be going to Colorado State, as has been reported and rumored with Steve Adazio. And
Day looked over like, have they announced that yet? It was like, well,
that's pretty much. Didn't he say that? Have they announced that yet?
I'm pretty sure.
I can't say. I don't want to blow it up.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they've announced that yet. It was like, well, okay, since you would probably know before they announced that, I'm going to take that as a yes.
Yeah, and he said he's probably got a pretty good chance or something to that effect.
Yeah, and that's such an interesting job because we talked in the context of Kevin Wilson taking that job. The last time we talked about that job. Urban Meyer was very intimately involved in that search process. Adazio was one of his offensive coordinators at Florida before he went to go take the Temple job, and just got fired at Boston College. And the college football coaching job carousel. It is a small community that there are a lot of Ohio State touches on the Fort Collins to Chestnut Hill to Columbus Hyperloop.
Yes, no kidding. And so that's where Dwayne Haskins talked a lot about Corey Dennis and the help that he gave him. And so, happy trails to him if it happens. Who even knows, Tom?
Who's to say? And you would. Ryan Day was obviously the head quarterback coach when Dwayne Haskins was here. Now you do have Mike Yursich here, so they have replaced Ryan Day with someone who I think has a long-term future in Columbus if he wants to stay here, and I would say has done a pretty darn good job developing a first-year starter who's the first year in the program to throw 40 touchdowns, 1 interception, and be a Heisman finalist. That seems like all right. Proof of concept is here, yes.
So the next year when Justin Fields wins the Heisman, that'll be what, 4 straight transfer quarterbacks to have won it, with Baker Mayfield, Kyler Murray, Joe Burrow, and then Justin Fields. Yes,
and also 4 Ohio State quarterbacks, 4 Ryan Day quarterbacks, at least as finalists in the span of 3 years, because he's had 3 in the last 2 years, because it's been Dwayne Haskins, Joe Burrow, and Justin Fields. So
where did JT finish in the 2016 ballot? Like in the top 7 or so?
I don't remember. In 16, wasn't he a finalist in 14? Or close to it?
Yeah, close to it. Like maybe finished like 5th, but they may have only invited a certain number, or maybe he was. I don't know. This is a long time ago.
This is the kind of thing that matters a lot because as we have repeatedly stated, the Heisman Trophy is an extremely good and important award. That
well, I'm just trying to figure out what kind of recruiting materials Ed Warner will put out. Mm-hmm. Based on how well the Ohio State players do that he once coached.
Yes, Justin Fields once parked in the same parking spot at the Woody Hayes as I did many years before.
Anything else from Ryan Day today? Scrolling through here, I think we've covered most of it. One of the things that he always says is when it comes to weather, both teams have to play in it. Mm-hmm. When it comes to preparing for this game and the time crunch, both teams have the same crunch.
Yeah.
Clemson is losing their offensive coordinator, so they've got to replace Jeff Scott, and they've got to do all of that. They have the same signing day, Tom, as Ohio State.
Yes, they do. Yes.
And Dabo has been all over the recruiting, the award shows. He's had players. So it's an even footing even if the footing isn't great.
Yeah, there's a couple things that have been kind of become a little bit of Ryan Day cliches this year. People keep asking him about, do you ever look back at where you were this time last year and just reflect on how crazy this has been? And it's like, I haven't had time. He every time answers like, I have not had I don't have time to do that. Maybe after the year we'll look at that. I don't know. I just haven't had time. Control the stuff you can control and don't worry about the stuff you can't, and just make the best of it. Work within the system you're working within. That is very much one of his things. And that's true of the weather. That's true of the college football playoff rankings. That's true of, were they going to go to the Fiesta Bowl versus the Peach Bowl? That's true of who were they going to play. That's true of the layoff between, that this is basically a 3-week layoff. On the first week, they were just completely running around the country like crazy people. It's all just kind of well, that's just how it is. So there's no sense worrying about it because this is how it is. And, we just, we're getting paid to make the best of this and handle it and deal with it. And
there's still stuff going on. It's almost every week where he is asked to reflect.
Yes.
And it's...
Are you new here? Have you not figured out the pattern yet?
And I tell you, it's the same people every week, not who ask, but who are here. And so maybe they weren't listening to the questions the week before.
Yeah.
The time to reflect will be after the season when there are no more games, and not immediately after.
Right. Yeah. Because then you have to finish recruiting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And plus, it's it just happened. I can't reflect right now. My mind is a million miles a minute. So maybe after science, not until maybe pro day when he stops by around the ring of reporters on pro day. Hey Ryan, can you reflect? You know what? I think I can.
Yeah.
I can finally reflect.
Or maybe this will be a Greg Schiano thing where it's not. This isn't the right time to talk about the Tennessee job.
This is about the guys who are leaving. This is about the pro day.
I'll talk about the Tennessee job at some point when the time is right. Spoiler alert: Ron Howard narrative voice. The time is never right.
In terms of health, Tyreek Smith also said he's good to go. He's healthy again, so that was another one. Seven Banks was kind of asked about Hafley. He seemed visibly bummed about it. Just upset as you would be, not angry or anything. He was talking about how he understands, and it's unfortunate this is because Cary Combs signed him, if I recall correctly. Never got to play for him, and I know it was Tabor, and I know it was Hafley, and then Shaun Wade was said he was happy for him because they're family, and it's good for his family, and that's Shaun Hafley's third coach that he's had in 3 years at Ohio State.
Shaun Wade, not Shaun Hafley. They're not literally family.
Well, like I said, a family. And we were going to get to talk to Cam Brown, but we didn't. So I was wondering if the perspective on the younger guys is much different than the older guys, even though they're only separated by a year. But Wade has been through this a couple of times.
Well, I think that there's a certain, you kind of grow a little bit of a callous at some point that, this is a business. And, I think back to Mike Weber and how just absolutely hurt he was when Stan Drayton left right after signing day. And, if we can have some real talk for a moment, that was not a great moment in Ohio State football history, how that was handled. But I remember Mike Weber being a little bit hurt and a little bit emotional about that, even after getting to Ohio State. He was not real thrilled about that. And, it ended up working out just fine. And Mike Weber had a very nice career at Ohio State, and Tony Alford did a very nice job coaching him. And it all worked out just fine. But, when you're new, you've just been getting recruited, and, you've been told this is a family, and this is I want you to come here to play for me. And, everyone says commit to a school, not to a coach, because the school's going to be there. The coach is not necessarily. But you're also selling relationships. You're selling, you're telling the parents that I'm going to take care of your kid. And then, and then you leave, and then, now there's a babysitter. That's not what I signed up for. So it's once the guy's been here a year or two, you kind of know, this is how it goes. And You want to be at a school where the coaches are in demand. Yeah. You don't want to be the coach. You don't want to be the guy who's going to play offense for Northwestern where, hey, it's the same offensive coordinator it was 10 years ago. Why is that? Oh, because he's terrible at his job. Okay.
Well, and you only have to go back and look at Jim Tressel's staff.
Sneeze. Siciliano. Sneeze. Oops, right. Did I not do that correctly?
And then, so Ryan Day today said he will go out and hire the best secondary coach, best defensive backs coach in America. And he's like, you can either do that or you can hire somebody who's going to be around for 8 years. We're not going to do that.
Yeah.
So.
And the coaches who are around long term here, guys like Larry Johnson, that's a function of age, not skill, talent. Yeah. Larry Johnson is not the 35-year-old young, 40-year-old young guy that Jeff Hafley is.
And you could also have assistant coaches who really love to be assistant coaches, and other schools would love to have them be their assistant coaches.
Yes.
Like Jim Haycock,
mm-hmm.
A great defensive line coach for Ohio State for many years, and just like being at Ohio State.
Yeah.
Luke Fickell for the longest time, just like being at Ohio State.
Mm-hmm.
Notre Dame tried to get him. Other teams tried to get him, but he liked being there. So there is that. That's not the case for all of Jim Tressel's staff.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need to get into it
mm-hmm.
because you already know who we're talking about. But
hypothetically, if someone left to go be a intern for the Cincinnati Bengals, I believe after was that a good smooth career transition? Hypothetically speaking, no, was that not?
No, not so much.
Was that not the equivalent of getting the head coaching job at a Power 5 school? No, okay.
No. I doubt that Tom Herman ever had to get his own coffee, let alone get coffee for other people.
Although you know who did have to get coffee for other people? Brian Hartline. Urban talked last year about that. Brian Hartline, his first year, he was kind of an intern, and Urban just basically wasn't. I don't think he called it like hazing, but it was kind of like, well, let's see how bad this dude wants to be here.
And that's why whenever a job opens, you'll have people, Buckeye fans, say, well, what about this former player?
Yes, should Orlando Pace be coaching the offensive line? Should Eddie George be coaching the running backs?
Call up James Laurinaitis. And it's like, that's great, but they're not coaching. Like, Brian Hartline came here and worked on the scout team
mm-hmm.
as a receiver for the scout team for Clemson.
Yeah.
It was that was it for the a lot of good he did.
Yeah.
No. But that's
is Ohio State doomed?
Like, if we do get to talk to Hartline on Wednesday, be like, you're not with the scout team right now, right? Because that did not go well last time.
Yes.
But that guy ground up from the bottom. He started, and quickly elevated, and then took over that spot.
Yeah.
Nobody else. I mean, and that says a lot for a guy who made millions, got a second contract in the NFL, got a good contract. You don't see other guys coming in and doing that, and that's why you don't just come in off of your radio show and become a position coach.
Right. It just that does not happen. There's a lot that goes into being a position coach and being any kind of coach of the of the 10 kind of key main assistants. There's a lot that goes into that, and there's a lot of recruiting. And there's a lot of time demands. There's just a lot of crap you got to do. And, for someone like, say, Orlando Pace, he's an NFL Hall of Famer. He's made tens of millions of dollars in his career. He might just want to go hang out. And, I don't know exactly what Orlando Pace is doing right now, but I'm guessing he probably plays golf, hangs out with his kids, enjoys life. You might not automatically just feel the calling to go try and convince 18-year-old kids to go to college in a certain spot.
Should we start wrapping up?
I think we should start wrapping up.
The place is getting busy, so we will go ahead and wrap up. Make sure to check the rest of the shows out on the Ozone Radio Network. You get the Buckeye Sloopcast on Mondays and Fridays. You got the Silver Bullets on Tuesdays. You got us whenever. At this point, we are at Ohio State's beck and call, and so that's what we do. Check the rest of the stuff out at theozone.net. If you are interested in becoming a Patreon supporter of this show, where you can get every show ad-free plus bonus episodes. We do 1 to 2 bonus episodes pretty much a week right now while stuff is going busy. We only promised one a month, but we've been exceeding that greatly. So if you want to check that out, you can go to patreon.com/Buckeye Weekly, and there will be various levels of support if you are interested. And we thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you on Wednesday.